Hamas resumes indirect ceasefire talks with Israel and Qatar, focusing on key agreements. An Egyptian plane delivers 15 tons of aid to Syria, supporting humanitarian efforts. And Israeli media reports the US confirms Israel's stay in southern Lebanon until April. It's 4 p.m. Cairo local time and you're now watching Qnews. I'm Hani Saif and we begin today's bulletin with the latest developments in Gaza. Hamas has announced the resumption of indirect negotiations with Israel over a ceasefire in Gaza, set to take place in Qatar. Hamas stated that this round of negotiations will focus on securing a complete ceasefire agreement, the withdrawal of occupying forces from the Gaza Strip, the details of its implementation, and the return of displaced people to their homes across the region. Egypt's UN representative Osama Abdel Khaled has accused Israel of targeting civilians and destroying Gaza's infrastructure, including hospitals such as Kamal Adwan, further exacerbating the healthcare crisis. Abdel Khaled condemned the blockade of northern Gaza, urging Israel to facilitate the delivery of medical and food supplies. He also called for an immediate ceasefire, accountability for Israel's ongoing actions, and an end to attacks on hospitals. Egypt's UN representative emphasized that Israel's forced displacement policies would not compel Palestinians to abandon their land. Palestine's UN representative Riyad Mansour has denounced Israeli actions in Gaza, describing them as war crimes and genocide. Speaking at a UN Security Council session, Mansour condemned the bravery of Palestinian medical teams working under fire, often at great personal risk. He criticized the international community for its inaction and underscored the atrocities faced by Palestinians, including the torture and killing of detained doctors. Mansour called for immediate global intervention to halt the violence and prevent further displacement and destruction. Eight members of the Israeli Knesset have urged Defense Minister Israel Katz to purge northern Gaza, calling for the destruction of all food, water and energy resources. Israeli media reported that the lawmakers, members of the Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee, called on the Israeli military to enforce a blockade, destroy infrastructure and kill anyone not raising a white flag in northern Gaza. They argued that the current military strategy has been ineffective in defeating Hamas. Health authorities in Gaza have reported that the death toll from Israeli attacks on the Gaza Strip has risen to over 45,700, with more than 108,850 people injured. The latest figures follow reports of Israeli occupation forces killing 59 Palestinians and injuring 273 in the Gaza Strip within the past 24 hours. UNRWA has urged Israel to lift its ban on the organization, which plays a vital role in delivering desperately needed aid to the besieged people of Gaza. In November, Israel's parliament passed two controversial bills, one banning UNRWA from operating in Israeli territory and another mandating the closure of its premises in the occupied West Bank, including East Jerusalem, as well as in war-torn Gaza. Palestinian media have reported that 6 Palestinian security guards who were working to provide humanitarian aid were killed when a vehicle was bombed by the Israeli army on Gaza's Salah ad-Din Street. That came as Palestinian media reported that 11 Palestinians were killed in an Israeli airstrike on a house in the Al-Shaja'iyya neighborhood in the east of Gaza City. Earlier, Gaza's Civil Defense Agency confirmed that its teams had recovered 6 bodies from the scene of the attack in southern Khan Yunis. Israeli occupation forces have killed a Palestinian teenager and injured 9 people in the Balata refugee camp. The Palestinian Ministry of Health said that Mohammed Midhat Amin Amir, 18, was shot dead during an overnight incursion in the camp on the outskirts of Nablus city. The Gaza Strip continues to endure relentless Israeli airstrikes with over 50 Palestinians killed, hospitals targeted and a healthcare system on the brink of collapse as diplomatic calls for a ceasefire intensify.
The Gaza Strip continues to face Israeli brutal military onslaught, causing extensive casualties and infrastructure damage. Over 50 Palestinians, including children, were killed in intensified airstrikes. In northern Gaza, Israeli occupation forces destroyed a compound labeled a Hamas hub and ordered the evacuation of staff and patients from the Indonesian and Al Auda hospitals. Gaza's healthcare system is near collapse, with over 136 strikes targeting 27 hospitals and 12 medical facilities, resulting in civilian and medical staff casualties. At a United Nations Security Council meeting, Egypt's UN representative Osama Abdelkhaliq accused Israel of systematic crimes, forced displacement, and targeting civilians. Abdelkhaliq called for an immediate ceasefire and accountability for hospital attacks. Similarly, Palestine's UN representative Riyad Mansour condemned Israel's actions as war crimes and genocide, praising the bravery of Palestinian medical teams and criticizing the global community's inaction. Mansour urged rejection of normalized atrocities, alleging Israel seeks to depopulate Palestinians and seize the land. France, Germany, and the United Kingdom emphasized the urgent need for a ceasefire to protect civilians and restore humanitarian aid access. Despite these diplomatic appeals, the situation remains dire, with continued violence worsening Gaza's humanitarian crisis. The international community is pressing for a cessation of hostilities and humanitarian relief corridors.
And for more analysis, we now move to Mona in our newsroom. Mona.
Thank you so much, Hani. And for further analysis on the current situation in Gaza, we're joined from the occupied Jerusalem by member of the Political Bureau of the Fida Party and Secretary of the National Action Committee in Jerusalem, Ratiba Nacha. Good evening to you and welcome to Qnews. And let me here start with, how do you view the resumption of ceasefire negotiations in Gaza and the possibility of reaching an agreement?
Yes, despite that, there are some positive atmosphere by sending the Israeli technical team to resume the negotiations. But we have been accustomed over the past month that whenever the technical team gets to being close to a deal, Netanyahu cripples the deal. Netanyahu and his government are giving some positive signs to the families of the hostages that there will be a deal for the exchange of hostages and that there is a great deal of flexibility from Hamas side to and the mediators asked both parties not to add any additional conditions to reach the deal. All these atmospheres are positive, and maybe before January 20th, maybe there might be a deal concluded. But we hope that this would be a comprehensive deal that guarantees a full withdrawal from Gaza Strip and ending this war, not just a humanitarian deal, a limited humanitarian deal.
Now, Ms. Netcha, the blockade on the northern Gazas, and how did it deteriorate the already very dire humanitarian situation?
In fact, it seems that the Israeli government is highly ideological in dealing with things. So it is trying to erase the North Gaza and put settlements in it. So the Israeli government is doing its best to end all the possibilities for the Palestinian citizens in Gaza Strip and put them before two options, either forced displacement or death. So we are speaking today about a full collapse of the health sector in Gaza Strip, starvation imposed and blockade imposed for more than 100,000 people. No food allowed into Gaza over the last 3 months, except few trucks that can be enough for like 1 day or so. So the operations in Gaza was not only attacking the 3 hospitals in the north of Gaza Strip that demolished them totally, but also was expanded to the center of Gaza and to Gaza City, direct targeting of anything that can be a basis for life and services for the Palestinians and infrastructure that serves the Palestinians. So Israel wants this place inhabitable. So this is the plan of the generals of Israel, despite that the media saying they are not doing that. But still the problem in North Gaza is that the full free hand of the Israeli generals is allowed to take whatever field decisions without any reference, without any constraints, and without any real justification, just targeting the civilians, destroying the facilities and erasing it altogether. So when we speak about North Gaza, all of Gaza Strip is targeted. But when we speak about the north of Gaza, it is the loss of the very basic elements of life. People are struggling against death in North Gaza. A siege for 3 months now, and heavy bombardment and full demolition of the infrastructure.
Now, how critical is the UNRWA's role in Gaza, and what impact does Israel's ban to this organization have on the Strip?
Spoken since the beginning of this war that the only entity that can reach the inhabitants of Gaza efficiently is UNRWA. No other organization or entity can do what UNRWA is doing regarding the educational services, health services, and aid services. UNRWA has got enough staff and enough experience to do this, and the basic qualifications to reach the people in Gaza. So ending the work of UNRWA is again a kind of imposing siege on the people in Gaza and depriving them of all the basic services and also depriving them of the basic health services. Ending the role of UNRWA is ending the opportunity for the access of humanitarian aid to the people in Gaza Strip. At this time, this is happening, and the role of UNRWA has been very essential and very crucial in getting the aid in and providing aid to the families of Gaza.
Now, what's your take on the Israeli Knesset proposal to purge Gaza, and how will that affect the whole region's future?
Yes, we have spoken that this government of Israel is highly ideological on this and wants to wipe out the Gaza Strip, wants to evacuate the people out of Gaza. Benjamin Netanyahu has not been approving the withdrawal in year 2000. He vowed to reoccupy Gaza. There are projects being proposed to the Knesset, and the government of Israel speak about that, about returning the settlements to the north of Gaza Strip. So what we see today regarding the demolition of the Gaza Strip, it's not a security objective or a military objective, it's an ideological objective of reoccupying Gaza and building settlements again in the north of Gaza Strip and return of settlements into Gaza Strip. This is not, and it's not secretly being prepared. It is out loudly said by the government and supporters of this government, especially the head of the Platoon 252 that said once that he is using his relatives and friends in destroying the buildings in Gaza in order to pave the way for building settlements. We have seen that on the social media, and we have seen the settlers saying that and promoting plans for settlement in the north of Gaza Strip and to have recreation places and many of these kind of things. This means that the fate of the Palestinian people is a total ethnic cleansing, getting them out of this place and ending their existence there.
Right, that was Ratiba Natsha, the member of the Political Bureau of Fidesz Party and Secretary of the National Action Committee in Jerusalem. We thank you so much for your analysis and your insights. And now back to you, Hani.
Thank you, Mona. And from Gaza, we move on to the latest developments in Syria. An Egyptian plane has landed at Damascus International Airport, delivering 15 tons of medical and relief supplies, including tents, blankets, food, and medicine. This shipment, part of Egypt's ongoing support for Syria, is intended to help alleviate the challenging conditions faced by Syrians. The Syrian Red Crescent will oversee its distribution. Additional aid is expected, underscoring Egypt's humanitarian commitment to reconstruction efforts and its support for friendly nations during crises, in line with recent UN appeals for urgent assistance in Syria. The Syrian embassy in Cairo has announced that it will grant free flight tickets to Syrian nationals wishing to return to Syria. The embassy also stated that it is providing free document authentication for Syrian citizens, in addition to extending passport validity for an additional 6 months, free of charge for one time. This is part of implementing the directives of the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Expatriates, Anas El-Shaybani. Lebanon's caretaker Prime Minister Najib Mikati stated that Syria's military operations chief Ahmed al-Shara invited him to Damascus to discuss strengthening bilateral ties. Mikati noted in a statement that he spoke with al-Shara over the phone about an incident involving the Lebanese army on the Beqa border with Syria. Al-Shara assured him that Syrian authorities had taken the necessary measures to restore calm. Syrian Civil Aviation and Air Transport Authority head Ashad al-Salibi has announced that Damascus International Airport will resume international flights starting January 7th. That came after a temporary closure after the fall of al-Assad's regime. Earlier reports suggested that the airport might reopen soon, with initial internal or trial flights planned to ensure operational readiness. The reopening will ease Syrians' return to their homeland. On December 8th, all airport employees were evacuated, halting flights and operations due to the regime's collapse. And moving on to Lebanon, where Israeli broadcasting has reported that U.S. General Gasper Jeffers informed the Lebanese army of Israel's intention to remain in southern Lebanon until April. Israeli media stated that this move would be justified by claims that the Lebanese army is not meeting the terms of the agreement and that Hezbollah is attempting to reorganize in the region, despite the ceasefire agreement calling for the Lebanese army's deployment in these areas. The head of the International Committee of the Red Cross, Mariana Spoljaric, has emphasized on Saturday that the ceasefire in Lebanon must be upheld, urging the continued flow of humanitarian aid to support civilians in the country. She stressed that Lebanese civilians cannot bear the consequences of a collapse in the ceasefire, which could lead to more death and destruction after the expiration of the 60-day deadline. The Lebanese news agency has reported that Israeli tanks and a bulldozer advanced into the town of Marun al-Ras and the Aqaba Marun neighborhood, firing a shell at a house in the area. Lebanese media also reported that the Israeli occupation army advanced into several villages and areas in southern Lebanon, continuing to violate the ceasefire with Hezbollah. The Lebanese army has announced that 4 of its members were moderately injured in renewed clashes in Baalbek between the army and Syrian armed groups. Clashes resumed in the area along the Lebanese-Syrian border after militants targeted a unit of the Lebanese army. Moving on to South Korea, investigators have asked the country's acting president to order the Presidential Security Service to comply with an arrest warrant for former President Yoon Suk-yeol. Security Service, along with military troops, on Friday prevented prosecutors from arresting Yoon Suk-yeol in a 6-hour standoff inside Yoon's compound. And in the United States, the House of Representatives Speaker Mike Johnson has been re-elected to the chamber's top position. Johnson initially appeared to fall short of the majority needed to retain his position in a roll call vote that lasted nearly 2 hours. However, 2 Republican opponents switched their votes to support him after lengthy negotiations, with at least one reporting receiving a call from Trump himself. Johnson won re-election with 218 votes, the minimum required. Republicans control the chamber by a razor-thin 219 to 215 majority.
In the history of the world. We have a mandate, and that was shown in the election site.
In Russia, the Defense Ministry has stated that Russian forces had taken control of the village of Nadia, in Ukraine's eastern Luhansk region. The ministry added that its air defense systems had shot down 10 Ukrainian drones over Russian territory on Saturday morning, including 3 over the northern Leningrad region. These are all the news we have for now, but here's a reminder of the stories we've been covering. Hamas resumes indirect ceasefire talks with Israel and Qatar, focusing on key agreements. An Egyptian plane delivers 15 tons of aid to Syria, supporting humanitarian efforts. And Israeli media reports the U.S. confirms Israel's stay in southern Lebanon until April. This concludes our news bulletin for this hour, but please don't forget to follow Q News on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram and TikTok at QNewsEGY to stay informed. I'm Hani Saif. Thank you for watching and stay tuned for more updates here on Q News.